So our second webinar is is entitled Content-Based Language Teaching, Implementing the Model in Academic Preparation Programs, presented by the wonderful Donna Brinton. Donna is an author and educational consultant in the field of teaching English as a second or foreign language. She has worked as a teacher educator in over 40 countries and is the co-author and the co-editor of numerous professional volumes, including Content-Based Second Language Instruction, New Ways in Content-Based Instruction, New Ways in ESP, Heritage Language Education, Teaching Pronunciation. So pronunciation is one of your major fields also, in addition to CBLT, right? The linguistic structure of modern English, teaching English as a second or foreign language in the content-based classroom. So Donna will be presenting for 45 minutes. We will then have 10 or to 15, yeah, more or less, yeah, right? We'll have 10 or 15 minutes discussion, oral discussion afterwards, but you can still use the chat box to jot in your comments or your questions on the go, if you have any. I will write them down as usual and just share them with Donna after the presentation so that she can answer some of them or all of them or some of them at least, right? So Donna, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you, Basma. Give me 1 minute to figure out how to do this. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
And it's full screen. Is that right?
Yes, it's full screen.
Okay, okay. So let me add my warm welcome to all participants. And I am speaking to you from Los Angeles, more specifically from the Hollywood Hills, right near the Hollywood sign, if you're familiar with that. So it's a wonderful day here, and I hope it's a wonderful evening there. Anyway, glad to be back. Sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone here. Somebody is driving me crazy. Okay. Doesn't want to advance. Not advancing the slide. I'm not quite sure why. There, that works. Okay, so we're talking about content-based instruction and how to implement this model of instruction in an academic preparation program. Literally not advancing. Okay, in the chat box, I'm asking you to feel free to post about the following topics. Here's what role does content play in your current learning or teaching situation? And is there specific content, themes, or topics that work particularly well for you? Explain. This is not a necessity, but if you have ideas as I'm talking, feel free to use the app to post about any of these topics. And we'll come back to these topics later on in the question and answer session. I don't know what's happening here, Basma. It's just not wanting to advance.
Maybe it's advancing, but a little bit slowly.
No, it's not advancing at all.
Oh, right. Do you want to send me your slides and perhaps
let me see if we can figure this out. I don't know why it was.
Can you try not, removing the full screen option and perhaps
Yeah,
we try that way.
Okay, here's the next slide.
I think some of the participants do not hear anything. I'm not sure why. So how many of you hear us all good? Yeah, yeah, it's audible for many, but for the others, it might be there is a problem with your own computer um or phone. Yeah, thank you.
So
So yeah,
let me
Ashley is
speak a
also
little.
hearing us.
Let's see.
Yeah, yeah, Ashley is
Okay,
here
let me speak a
also.
little bit and see. Okay, so overview of the session, and then let's see how many people can hear what I'm saying as I'm talking. And maybe they can let you know in the chat, Posma.
Yeah,
So,
all
and
of them
oh,
hear you very well. Yeah, I think
all of
everyone
them
is
are hearing
hearing
me?
most of them,
Okay, so
but
we
there are
just
two,
have,
yeah, but
okay,
it's
so we
not
just have
your
a
fault.
problem
Yeah,
with advancing the signs. Yeah. Okay,
right.
so overview of the session that I want to talk about, I'd want to give a little bit of background to content-based instruction in general. And moving on then to prototype models of content-based instruction, why we use content in the language classroom. Is CBI approach? Is it a method? How can we analyze it or define it? Um, and then I want to move on a little bit to talking about the course syllabus and options in the course syllabus. Um, and I'm going to illustrate all of these ideas through a sample unit of sociology that's a university level, entry level course for non-majors, talk about aligning course objectives, designing the content-based syllabus, implementing content-based instruction, some benefits of content-based instruction, and then some caveats. So let's see if we can, this is at least, I'm sorry, all the animations are not going to be visible, but at least this way we can advance the slides. So I apologize, I don't know what's going wrong here. So let's do a little bit of background on content-based instruction. And I want to talk about UCLA, which was 30 years my institution, University of California, Los Angeles, and a cooperative effort in CBI between
Um,
UCLA and the University of Ottawa.
I'm
Cosma,
sorry to
question?
interrupt, Donna,
Mhm.
but can you share again your slides because we don't see any of the slides.
You don't see any of the slides.
No,
Oh,
right. I
goodness.
think you ended share,
Yeah,
but
ended
you
share. Okay, hold on. I'm not even finding the meeting now, Cosma. Can you hear me?
I hear you. You're still in the meeting,
Here,
Donna.
I'm still in the meeting, but I'm not.
So the share button is on the top
Oh, I know, and
right.
there we go. Okay, sorry. See it now?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
let me try the full screen option again and see if this works by any chance. You're seeing that. The
Yes.
question is, will it advance? Will it advance? Ah, there we go. Okay, I think maybe we found the problem. Can you see this screen with a
Yeah.
picture of two people?
With the
Okay, let
pictures, right.
me continue. So on the left, there's a person that you're probably most of you familiar with, Steve Kreischen. You may not know that Steve Kreischen was a professor in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California, but he was also at a certain point in his career affiliated with the University of Ottawa's Department of Linguistics. And then on the right, someone you may not know, and this is Mike Rose from UCLA's writing programs. He was the director for many years of the UCLA writing programs. These two people are very instrumental in the early years of content-based instruction. Why? Steve Kreischen decided to do his sabbatical at the University of Ottawa and working there with people in the Department of Linguistics and Applied Linguistics. And one of his suggestions was to try an experiment where students could satisfy their foreign language requirement by taking a content course, such as Introduction to Psychology, in a second language. University of Ottawa is a bilingual university, French-English. So if you were an Anglophone Canadian, you could take this course in psychology through French, through the medium of French, and satisfy not only your psychology requirement, but also your French language requirement. Mike Rose independently came up with an idea. I'll talk more about this idea a little bit later, because this was the program that I was affiliated with. And he also suggested combining a language course and a content course. So this is how these very distant places came to be connected. And my colleague Ann Snow and I were told by another colleague at UCLA that this was happening in Ottawa. And we were introduced to a professor there named Mari Vesha. And she decided to spend her sabbatical year at UCLA, and we started writing about content-based instruction. So that's how I got into this whole idea of teaching language through content. And Mari Vesha and Ann Snow both figure majorly in my own work on content-based instruction. So very early on, Mari, Ann, and I, this is back in the late 70s actually, started analyzing the types of content-based instruction that we saw beginning to emerge in different global contexts. And we came up with what we called at the time prototype models of content-based instruction, which consisted of theme-based, sheltered, and adjunct. And I'm going to talk more about all three of these. This was what existed at the time. We have an updated map that we published more recently in an article where there are many, many more branches of CBI. We don't have time to talk about all of those today, but I think it's important for us to understand the three prototype models. So let me go into them a little bit more in depth. So what is theme-based instruction? This is going to sound very familiar, I think, to many of you. So theme-based instruction refers to instruction that focuses on specific themes of quote unquote interest and relevance to the learners. The themes are introduced to provide a point of departure for skill and language-based instruction, and they create the organizing principle for the course. So typically these themes might extend over a week or several weeks, and the goal of the theme is to provide that kind of rich input or contextualization of language issues that allows the learners to acquire the second language. And I'll give you some examples. So in a multi-skills ESL or EFL course, each module of the course would be organized around a different theme. So for example, extreme sports, voluntourism, reducing your carbon footprint, smart cars, therapy pets. And the choice of theme obviously depends on the learner audience. So these are just examples, but this may start to sound familiar to you because if you think about many textbooks today, actually the majority of ESL, EFL textbooks, if you open the table of contents, this is the type of thing that you see. You don't see past tense, present tense, future tense, but you see the themes that are listed. And these are all encompassing themes in a theme-based approach to language teaching. Second example to show something that's a little bit different might be here an English for Academic Purposes writing course. This is from one of my UCLA colleagues, where she created a ESL writing module that was centered around the theme of homelessness in the US, which is a huge issue in our country. The sources that she used, this is a teacher-created theme-based course, so different than a sort of commercial textbook course. Visuals, documentary videos. She had one video called Homeless Women of Beverly Hills, which the students really enjoyed and thought was fascinating. Newspaper, journal articles, academic text excerpts, and even fiction, so a short story that might deal with this topic. And then in terms of the types of skills that she focused on, that she had her students focus on, critical thinking, essay writing. So the final project in that course was a critical evaluation of theories of homelessness. So this is, as I said, a course that was taught in our program at UCLA at the sort of upper level for our international student population. Okay, the second model, it's going to sound probably less familiar to many of you, but it's a very popular model in the US, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So it refers to instructional models in which students with gaps in their second language proficiency, so this is not their first language and they lack sort of an academic language proficiency, they're separated from the mainstream. And the medium of content instruction is students' second language, with the content instructors receiving specialized training in what are called sheltering techniques. In this manner, these teachers help students to access the content material, and they can focus more on the needs of the second language learning population. The students are exposed to the same rich academic language and complex concepts of their L1 peers attending the same school, but they're separated for the purpose of giving them this more enriched curriculum. And this is meant to provide the kinds of optimal conditions for second language acquisition to occur. Why is this an issue in the US? Because we have such a huge immigrant population, and these students come into our public schools, not necessarily at the beginning of the academic year. They may come at any time and any place, and so it's very important to find ways to help scaffold the learning situation for these students. In Los Angeles alone, we have something like 89 languages, first languages of students who are attending our schools, which are English medium instruction. So you can see how that can become a big issue. Okay, here's an example of a sheltered course. This one designed for fourth grade sheltered science students who are English language learners. The topic here is links in a food chain, and the tasks that they're set to do: guided inquiry, what is a food chain? They learn a song about the food chain. They do a yarn toss. They do poster projects with magazine pictures, and they do some reflective entries in their science notebooks. So this is an example of what a sheltered course might look like. And then finally, adjunct instruction, which I can talk about with a little bit more background knowledge, because this is the model that I have worked most with. And I'll come back to the UCLA experience in just a minute. So adjunct instruction refers to an instructional model in which we pair a content and a language course. And these two instructors, the content teacher and the language teacher, collaborate to dovetail their instructional objectives. The content course provides this point of departure. Language objectives are identified with respect to students' linguistic needs in the content course. And then second language acquisition occurs through exposure to this high-level challenging language in the content course and through the systematic academic language instruction that's provided in the language course. So I was the language instructor in this model for 7 years during the summer in an enrichment program that I'm going to describe. This was the UCLA's freshman summer program, and it was a summer bridge program for entering first-year university students who came from different backgrounds, usually different L2 backgrounds, but were very fluent in English and had graduated from US high schools, but yet they'd been determined to have some gaps in their academic language proficiency. So the goal of this 6-week bridge program was to ease them in this transition into their new academic environment. The courses that they were enrolled in, they had a choice of a general education content course such as Introduction to Psychology, Human Geography, Political Science, and then also they enrolled in the language course. I worked in the language course that was paired with Introduction to Psychology for most of the time that I worked in this program, but I also one summer did the political science module. And then, as I mentioned, it was a paired or linked course format. So the language course that was paired with psychology was different than the language course that was paired with human geography, etc. And most important here is this built-in coordination of language and content faculty. So if you don't have this coordination, you really cannot consider this an adjunct program. That's probably the most essential piece of our definition. Okay, in the chat box, I'm going to keep moving forward, but feel free to post about any of the following topics or about the following topic. Were you already familiar with any of these prototype models of content-based instruction that I've been presenting? Have you experienced this model either as a student or as a teacher? And then did your experience differ in any way from the description that I have provided? And if so, how? So keep those in mind. Feel free to put these in the chat box. I'm going to move ahead because we have a lot of material to cover. All right, so my next subtopic is why content? Why should we concern ourselves with content? We're language instructors after all. Why do we need to think about content? Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why. First of all, content enhances student motivation. Just a sort of aside, when I taught in this freshman summer program, the first week of the class, my students were very confused and they said to me, "Why do we have 2 psychology classes? We thought you were our language teacher." And I said, "I am your language teacher. We're just using the psychology content to be able to focus more specifically on the language issues that you need to learn in order to do well in this content course." By the end of week 1, they had their first psychology quiz. And the following Monday, they came back and they said, Miss Brinton, we wrote an essay that was very similar to the one that we did in your class for the psychology, and we did really well on the exam." And I said, "Oh, really? That's interesting." So they were very, very motivated all of a sudden to attend my class and to do better in my class. And that continued for the entire 6 weeks. Okay, content provides a meaningful context for the language items that are being presented. So we basically threw away our English language textbooks and created all our own materials, which used the psychology vocabulary and the psychology concepts to teach the various language issues that we felt were appropriate for them to be learning. Content drives the curriculum. It serves as an organizing principle for decisions about selection of language and sequencing of language. It provides very rich opportunities for second language acquisition to occur by providing this comprehensible input, by allowing for overt attention to language skills and academic skills, and by affording opportunities for negotiation of meaning about meaningful content. And then it exposes students to high-level academic content, and it encompasses work on academic skills that can transfer to other academic disciplines. So these are all, I think, legitimate reasons for why we can use content and should be using content in a language course. Let's move on to the question of, is CBL?
Donna, I think the
Yeah.
slides are frozen. We are still looking at adjunct instruction.
Here. Stop sharing and start sharing again. How's that? Let's try.
Right. Donna? I think Donna might have left the meeting and then she will probably perhaps reconnect again. So we'll wait a little bit for her. Perhaps would it be possible to answer some of the questions that Donna asked at like earlier about whether we are familiar with the content-based language teaching models that she introduced? Are we familiar with the theme-based instruction model, the sheltered model, and the adjunct model? Then perhaps whether we've used that in our classrooms and to what extent those models were successful, if ever we implemented one or more of these. Just waiting for Donna to reconnect again. So perhaps this is just some time to think about these questions. So Rakia, you're in. Okay. So want to join, please? So Rakia, do you hear me? You're in the meeting. So I just sent Donna a link, the link to the meeting again, just in case uh, she doesn't have access to the link again, but she should have. Um, let's wait a little bit. I sent her an email, but I'm gonna send her another message. Okay, I'm not sure if Donna is going to pop in again, so let's wait again a few minutes. I sent her a message on LinkedIn, so but she seems to be disconnected uh, from her account. Yeah, I think she has a technical problem related to her internet connection. Right, thank you. No, Hajar, she doesn't have WhatsApp. Okay, so Donna is trying to rejoin again the meeting. I think she lost the link. So right. Donna? Donna? That's weird that you're not being allowed in the meeting because I just allowed you to. Let me see again. That's very weird. Donna, do you hear me? Oh, right. That's very weird. But Bushra, you are here connected as a participant. How come? Yes, you are here. I see that all of you are here. Can you just say if you hear me? Because I see that you are in the meeting, but people say no, I'm not allowed. So that's very weird that you are not allowed while I see your name in. Yes, so you're allowed in the meeting. I sent you, but there is a problem with my, maybe, let me go back. I sent you a new invitation uh, by email, but it says undeliverable all the time. And I'm sure that my internet connection is also very stable. Okay, external, right. But I don't know how to change that. Even when she connected at the beginning, it was external, David. So, okay. Oh, hmm, hmm, okay. Oh, right. I don't know if Donna is hearing me, but I designated you as presenter. So, mm, I'm not sure if I can do that now, changing her to a co-host as the meeting is going on. I'll try. Okay. Okay, I changed. Donna, I think you should have access now. No. Okay. So you're here. Donna, do you hear me? Oh, oh, right. Oh. Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm
Wow.
wow. Wow. This has
That was
never
very
happened to me,
long.
and I don't know where the problems are coming from. Let me
I
see if
don't
I can
know.
share my screen again. Let me try again, okay? And I forget exactly where we were, but we'll figure it out.
You were asked. Let me
It's not letting me
see.
share. It's not letting me share.
Okay.
Can you give me permission?
Uh, I think I gave you permission to do this.
Or
So
yeah, but I
let
think
me. Yeah, let me try again.
or I also I sent you the slides, Basma.
Yes, but I'm trying
Give
again to, yeah, I
give me
designated you
permission.
as a
Yeah.
presenter. Yes.
Yeah. But we
Can you
change.
do that now?
Yes, now I can.
Okay.
Good luck to everybody. Good luck to all of us.
I'm so sorry
No, I
about
am
this.
sorry. This happens. We deal with it. Okay, can you
Right.
see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let me scroll down to where I think we were.
We were just after we finished the adjunct
And
based model,
okay, and we were
and
talking about content,
no, we didn't talk about
a
content.
method or an approach. We did. We didn't talk
We
about
talked
content.
about what we didn't have the slides. Right. Okay.
You didn't have the slides. Okay,
Yeah.
let me quickly
No, but we
show those
talked about it.
slides.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, okay. I don't think you need to see those slides. Let's just move on to a method or an approach. And let's see if you can see this. Full screen.
Yes, we see your
Okay,
screen.
everybody
CBI,
keep
a
your
method,
fingers
an
an
approach.
approach or
Right.
neither, or neither, or
Or
neither,
neither. Yes.
or neither. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make the claim that it's neither an approach nor a method. What it is instead is it's a type of syllabus, like the task-based syllabus or the situational syllabus. And so to refer to it as a method or an approach is probably not appropriate. Think of it as an organizing principle, and it belongs to Wilkins' classification of the analytic syllabus as opposed to a synthetic syllabus. And a good example of the synthetic syllabus is a grammatical syllabus where the learners get bits and pieces, and the idea is that eventually they will connect those bits and pieces together. And analytical syllabus works exactly the opposite way, where they get kind of a more holistic presentation, and then they begin to analyze the bits and pieces themselves with assistance and scaffolding from the instructor. And then as a syllabus, the CBI can serve as its function is to organize course content. Okay, Bosma, you tell me if the slides are not showing. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to move
They're
on to the
showing
next
right now.
slide.
Right.
You can see
Yes.
the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just hope that it stays. Okay, so what is a course syllabus? Real briefly, the term syllabus refers to a public document that defines course content, usually listing course objectives, components, requirements, etc. In short, it outlines the plan for the course. And so a CBI syllabus, like any other syllabus, would perform these functions. What does it include? I like this nice list from Weber and Graves. Overall goals of the course, specific learning objectives or outcomes, topics that might be explored, specific academic skills that we're going to focus on, subject-specific content concepts that need to be mastered, grammar or vocabulary that we would include in our presentation, the timetable of the course, what do we do, when and where and how, the materials that we're going to be using, any assignments that students are required to do, types of in-class interactions and activities, and of course, to students, the most important one, the assessment and the grading scheme. So like any other approach to teaching language, the CBI syllabus would cover these 10 areas. Some common syllabus options. This is the one I suffered under for many years when I was studying French, and it's the reason I cannot speak French today, the grammatical syllabus. The notional syllabus, where the units are things like talking about the weekend, going to the doctor, discussing holiday plans. The functional syllabus, expressing your likes or dislikes, asking for clarification, making an invitation. The content-based syllabus. The units here would be, as we've discussed, content-laden, so alien invasion, becoming a change agent, elder abuse, heroes, etc. Task-based syllabus, very, very similar in many ways to the content-based syllabus, deciding what to pack for a trip, planning a wedding, determining how to prevent identity theft, again, depending always on the student population. Okay, in your chat box, I'm going to just ask you to continue posting ideas. So are you familiar with the syllabus types that we just ran through? And then which is most frequently used in your context in Tunisia? Okay, what I'd like to do now is can you still see these slides, Basma? Everything okay? Yay, yay, okay. Let's hope it stays. I'm going to show you an example of a content-based unit. This again is from work that I did with my colleagues at UCLA because we found that we couldn't identify textbooks that really worked with our student population. These were very high-level students, most of whom had graduated from American high schools or English medium high schools elsewhere in the world and were attending UCLA, but did not speak English as their first language. So we created our own materials. And the way we did this was we filmed about 200 hours of content lectures from professors across the curriculum at UCLA who gave us permission to come into their classes. And eventually we narrowed it down to 8 different content areas. The one I'm going to show you is sociology. So this is an example of the materials that we created for our high-end English learner population using a content-based syllabus. So this particular unit, which we call Insights from Sociology, was a 3-part unit. So 3 different lectures from the sociology professor, also accompanying readings that the sociology professor assigned to his students. This was the content that we were working from. And then our job as language instructors was to figure out which language items were the most appropriate ones to connect to so that the students could best deal with this sociology material. Here's some of the work that we did. So we identified key terms from sociology that were important for our students to know. We looked at how they should learn how to describe emotions and reactions, how they could express tendencies. People are likely to do X, Y, or Z. It constructions were very, very important in this sociology material, both in the readings and in the lectures. Things like it's conceivable that, it should be added that. Using modals to express possibility in the past. The man may have needed help. and then using adverbials of concession. So this is the work that we did, sort of, my one colleague refers to this as mining the content for language. So looking at the content itself, looking at the language of the content lecture, the language of the content readings, and pulling out these very important language issues that our students are struggling with. In terms of strategy instruction, we also identified the different skill areas. So speaking, asking clarification questions in an academic lecture. For writing, using paraphrase. Paraphrase was very, very difficult for our students to do. And we spent a lot of time on paraphrasing activities. Reading, presenting evidence that contradicts popularly held beliefs. And then course objectives. So here's some of the things that we did. We wanted to align our language and academic skills objectives with the content objectives. So here's what it looks like. In terms of the content, this is what students were being required by the sociology professor to learn how to do. Recognize the 3 unwritten rules of social interaction with strangers. So these were the 3 mini units that he had presented: civil inattention, bystander apathy, and intervention. Understand the role of relational wedges in public situation. A relational wedge is what makes you act on a particular situation where you might otherwise not act on it. So if you see a homeless person lying on the sidewalk, do you ignore that person and walk by, or do you stop and ask if that person needs help? That's a relational wedge. What is it that makes you do that? And one of the most important relational wedges that the professor was talking about was if a child is involved in a situation, that always serves as a relational wedge, and people tend to then intervene. And then identify these conditions under which public aid is rendered. In terms of language, as I've already mentioned, these are the items that we had identified: the it constructions, collocations, expressing tendencies, using modals to express possibility in the past, and then the academic skills, as I also already mentioned, paraphrasing, understanding the genre of a research report, asking questions of clarification in a discussion section or in an academic lecture, and presenting evidence that contradicts popularly held beliefs. And then we come to student learning outcomes. So student learning outcomes describe the student's target achievement. They're measurable, so we can actually do some assessment of the student's skills. They guide our assessment of student efforts. They're tailored to a specific curriculum, and they span the range of Bloom's taxonomy of higher order thinking skills. So these are some verbs that are useful for identifying and then stating your student learning outcomes. And I'll show you what we came up with for the sociology. This was always a team effort. So by the end of this unit, students can, and then we list the various skills. In terms of listening, they can distinguish cause and effect in an academic lecture. In terms of speaking, they can formulate appropriate questions of clarification. For reading, they can evaluate a theory based on the evidence that's been presented by the author. For writing, define key terms. For grammar, employ modal verbs to express possibility in the past. And vocabulary, recognize inappropriate use of colloquial language in academic writing. And remember that we had 8 different units. So this was just the sociology unit that we created for our students. And all of the other units have similar SLO statements. Okay, in the chat box, if you wish, feel free to post about any of the following topics. In your current syllabus, how are course objectives framed? What do you consider to be the most important objective of your courses or course? Are language and skill objectives aligned? And this is maybe a very important one. It's very difficult initially if you haven't tried to do this. So this is an important thing to think about. And what about your content objectives? And then, do you have student learning outcomes that include coverage of content, language, and academic skills, like the previous slide that I just showed you? Okay, some steps in the process of designing a content-based syllabus. Again, here from Weber and Graves, and this is a chapter that they've just written for a new book that my colleagues, Ann Snow, Marianne Sulz-Mercia, and I have written. It's the 5th edition of Teaching English as a Second or Foreign Language that's coming out in February. Needs assessment, that's the first step. So considering what are my students' language needs, what are their content needs if I'm using a content-based syllabus, how can I assess these needs so that I can address them appropriately, determining goals and objectives, what are the purposes and intended outcomes of the course, what will my students need to do or learn to do in order to achieve these goals, conceptualizing the content, what's the backbone of what I teach? What am I going to include in my syllabus? Selecting and developing materials, how and with what will I teach the course? What's my role? What are my students' roles? How will I develop the content and activities? What systems will I develop in terms of organizing the content and activities? For evaluation, how can I assess what the students already know? How can I assess what they've learned? And how will I assess the overall effectiveness of my course? And then finally, considering resources and constraints. What are the givens of my situation? What limits or restrains the possibilities of what I can do with this particular course? So I think that's a nice list to kind of have at hand and to use when you're planning any kind of syllabus, but especially maybe a content-based syllabus. Useful paradigm for implementing CBI, another one that I'm very, very fond of. And this is the so-called 6 T's from Stoller and Grabe, which we published in another, Ann Snow and I published in another book that we did, The Content-Based Classroom. And so they say the 6 T's that we should be identifying in any content-based course are themes, texts, topics, threads, tasks, and transitions. And I'll go through each one of these rather quickly. A theme, obviously, the central idea that organizes our major curricular unit. Typically, we might have multiple themes in a given term. So examples might be the solar system or historical monuments. In terms of the texts, the content resources, written or oral, which drive the basic planning of the theme units. So readings, videos, audio tapes, etc. Topics, subunits of content that explore more specific aspects of the theme that are selected to complement student interests, content resources, teacher preferences, and curricular objectives. And here an example might be humans in space, technology in space, research in space. So the general theme for this one was space, but the topics, which are more specific, we've identified 3 different possible topics we could focus on in our course. And then the final 3 T's, threads, which are linkages across themes that create greater curricular coherence. And these are often neglected. This is, I think, a very nice addition from Stoller and Grabe to remind us that, you know, we don't just throw ideas at students, but we want them to create these threads. We want to help create these threads so they can see the interconnectedness of the themes that we've been introducing. These are means for reviewing and recycling content and language across themes, and for revisiting learning strategies. Example here might be the responsibility to uphold civil rights, protect endangered cultures, and conduct ethical research, where the themes were pollution, demography, and Native Americans. Tasks, instructional objectives, instructional activities and techniques that are utilized in the classroom that are derived from the texts that we've selected to use. So examples here would be something as simple as information gap, reading for main ideas, note-taking, and then transitions, instructional actions that provide coherence across topics and tasks within themes. So the example would be a shift in emphasis from global population trends to trends in developing countries, to trends in developed countries, to trends in the student's home countries. These are the transitions we could be using. So this is another way of organizing, using the 6Ts framework of organizing your course, maybe an alternative to what Weber and Graves have suggested. What are some benefits of a CBI approach? Well, I think there are a lot of benefits. Maybe one of the main ones is that we're using mainly or almost exclusively authentic materials. So here, authentic readings, authentic listening sources that have very high validity with the students. In our academic preparation program at UCLA, this was one of the reasons we rejected the commercial textbooks because they didn't have authentic readings, they didn't have authentic sources, and they really, our students didn't seem to feel that these were appropriate materials for them to be learning from. And they responded quite a bit better to the materials that we created in this Insights project. Language support is integrated into a CBI approach, obviously. The content units are cross-curricular, so that's important in an academic preparation program that we expose students to different content areas. The tasks mirror authentic content course tasks. And in fact, in our project, our Insights project, as I mentioned, we taped over 200 hours of video. And so we used all of these tasks that the professors had used in their own courses, and we employed many of those tasks in our own materials. So that enhanced the authenticity of the tasks. The skill focus will mirror those that students encounter across the disciplines. So it helps prepare them for academia. And then these skills can be transferred to their learning in other content disciplines. So I think these are all important benefits of a CBI approach. Some caveats, however. CBI is very flexible. I think it can be used in a very wide variety of contexts. But of course, we can employ different models of CBI. And some models may be more appropriate, some models may be less appropriate. Very context sensitive, so it should be adapted to the specific context in which it's being implemented. It also needs to be age appropriate, relevant to the lives of students, motivating. This is one of the big drawbacks of theme-based instruction, because very often with these theme-based textbooks, who is it that's identifying what's motivating for the students? Some author in a very different context than the context in which this textbook is eventually going to be used. And we also get this issue of students just saying, I really don't want to hear more about global warming. I've had that topic and I'm really tired of learning about that topic. So I think we have to be very aware of this relevance and also the motivation issue. And then curricular goals must be approach specific, clearly spelled out, reflect the needs and interests of students. Materials have to be reflective of the curricular goals. They need to be obviously appropriate in level for the students. And this one is hard to translate into actuality, but rich in language teaching possibilities. And then in-service education, very important, especially I think with content-based instruction, that we assist teachers in understanding the model and in more successfully implementing it. So as with any curriculum, success lies in careful attention to all the details of its implementation and to the coordination of teaching aims among instructors. In the chat box, again, feel free to comment. What might you take away from this presentation that applies to your current or future teaching situation? And then what remaining questions do you have? So I think we're going to turn it over to Q&A, but I'd like to give special thanks to the webinar organizers and to the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research that helped to sponsor this webinar. I apologize profusely for all of the technical issues, but luckily we figured out, or something happened that charmed us so that we could continue. And thanks for all the behind the scenes work there, Basma. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
I
much,
think,
Donna, and sorry for the technical
oh,
issues. I'm not
you
sure what
know,
happened really.
we live with it. We live with it. It's part of the issue of
Right,
doing virtual presentations. So
right.
yeah. Do we have time for Q&A, or what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think there were some already comments in the chat box. So,
Okay.
for example, I think we have a participant from India who said
Uh,
that theme-based models are common in India where she's teaching. In Algeria, however, these models are quite rare for their implementation, so they are not implemented a lot in the Algerian context. We have also a comment saying that CBLT is like ESP. Do you agree that CBLT is like ESP or is part of ESP, maybe? Donna?
I have an entire chapter, an entire presentation about that. But the short answer is that ESP is an approach to teaching language, and content-based, as we've said, is a syllabus. Now, why we see a similarity between ESP and CBI is that many ESP courses use a CBI syllabus in order to organize their content. And I think that's probably the most popular way of organizing an ESP syllabus today is to use an ESP course is to use a CBI type of syllabus. So
Right.
in the answer is yes and
Yeah.
they're not
We
they're
we
not the
all
same. They're not the same, but they can definitely overlap.
right. Uh, I also have another comment by Watt. Let me scroll down. Yeah. Watt said, I think both literature and cultural studies within the English departments can be considered as content-based courses. So we do teach literature courses and cultural studies in our English department in Tunisia. So she's saying, well, they can be considered as content-based courses. However, in both, we tend to integrate language skills into formative and summative assessments. Would you agree that this integration aligns with the principles of content-based instruction, or should language be assessed separately from content in these courses? I'm gonna copy again perhaps you want to read it again. Um, um, so yeah,
I think I understand the question.
yeah,
Um,
okay,
yeah. So in answer to what I think, yes, I would agree that that it shouldn't be separated. The language and content areas shouldn't be separated here. So especially I think in those fields that she was mentioning. And
right.
yeah.
But
So
I think the question is like, should language be assessed separately from content in these courses? Since these courses are not really teaching language, they are teaching content. But when we assess students when we assess their essays in literature or cultural studies, we do, for example, penalize them for language mistakes. I think this is what Wad meant. Wad, you can pop
okay.
up at any time, or you can raise your hand if you want to ask the question orally.
Yeah, let's maybe hear the question orally.
Right. Not sure if Fuad is here, but if you're here, you can raise your hand and um
Maybe no longer here.
yeah, maybe she's no longer
Yeah,
here, right?
yeah. But basically I would say no, I would not suggest separating them. I would say it sounds pretty much like we could classify that as kind of a sheltered course. So you've got students who are learning through the medium of English, a particular content area, and you don't want to just separate out language and say we're going to assess language and we're going to assess content because they are so connected.
Right. I think Wad is going to
I think she
I think
just popped up.
yes.
Yeah, she just popped up a minute ago and then she disappeared again.
No, I activated your mic, Wad. So if you hear me, you can speak. No? Right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
We
we
can.
do.
Okay, glad to have you all, all the TC Tunisia alumni and Professor Donna. Currently, I'm teaching cultural studies and I'm integrating the language part, language accuracy, as part of the scoring rubric. For example, out of 20, I give it 4 points. I don't know if what I'm doing is correct because we are teaching like history or thematic topics related to US and British culture. So that's what Basma was trying to explain. And
Yeah.
again, it's part
I,
of content. Mhm.
yeah. I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're doing the right thing. So I would keep it doing what you're doing already. Integrate the language into the content and give it a certain number of points or whatever you're doing on your rubrics. I think that's absolutely fine.
Right. Okay, there is another question by Khawla. How can CBLT be effectively aligned with CFR descriptors in academic preparation programs?
So CFI descriptors.
Yes,
Can you
the
can you
Common
explain what you
European
mean?
Framework.
Oh, the Common European Framework. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you can apply the Common European Framework. We don't do that in the US, obviously, so I'm not all that familiar with it. But whatever framework you use, whatever framework has been decided upon, you can very easily use that framework and sort of overlay it on the content-based class and use that as your assessment.
right. I think that perhaps the thing is that the CFR and content-based language instruction are not do not contradict each other. So we
Not
can
at all.
use we can use CBLT while at the same time assess our students across the CFR scale. Right. Other questions? Let me check the chat box. Right. Yes, Baria, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing very well your name. She asked, is theme-based an outdated approach? Is theme-based like teaching like us an outdated
Wow,
approach?
that's a very interesting question. I don't think that theme-based is an outdated approach. I think it's very important depending on the learner population. When we're talking about lower level students, I think it's not possible to use a lot of authentic content. And I think the textbook market, that's why the textbook market has so embraced theme-based. I mean, if you look at practically any textbook series that are coming out from commercial publishers like National Geographic Learning or Longman or Pearson, this is what they're using, and they're using it because it's a very effective way of organizing the course. Um, there are a lot of critics of theme-based instruction. Some of the main criticisms that I mentioned already, the fact that the people who are identifying the themes that are being used aren't necessarily people who are totally familiar with the context in which that book is eventually going to be used. And so therefore they may choose themes that are not motivating for the students. I had a really interesting assignment with Department of State in Kurdistan. And I asked, we were talking about theme-based instruction and looking at some of the criticisms. And I asked them, are there themes in your textbooks that aren't engaging for your students, that your students don't like or don't embrace? And they said, yeah, trains. And I said, well, what? Everybody said trains. I said, well, what's wrong with trains? Why don't your students, like reading about trains? And they said, we have no trains in Kurdistan. There are no trains in Kurdistan. Everything has been bombed, and our students don't want to talk about this. So you can see the whole cultural sensitivity issue there. But at the same time, I'm going to defend theme-based instruction because it's such a rich way of putting together a curriculum. If you hit on themes that are engaging, you can have a lot of success with theme-based instruction. And I'm also a big proponent of teacher-created theme-based units as opposed to commercial theme-based units, but that entails a lot of work on the part of the teacher. It's really what
Yes.
my colleagues and I did with the Insights project that I presented to you. It was a huge amount of work for us to make these 8 units for our students. On the other hand, we did eventually get a publisher interested, and they published it as a book series, two series, textbook series, and we made quite a bit of money off of it. So that was a nice outcome.
Right. Yeah. Um, I will finish perhaps with a comment or a question by Amina. In secondary education, we use theme-based instruction, so to teach English. However, this type requires constant, continuous, and updated themes. I think this is pretty much what you've been
This is
hinting to. Could
music to
the
my ears. Yeah.
yeah. Could the other types be of help, like sheltered instruction and adjunct? I remember that for one of them, you said it requires a lot of coordination between the content language teacher and the language teacher. But she said, could the other types be of help?
They could be. The adjunct model is, you probably notice that I have sort of a preference for the adjunct model because I think in the end, it's probably the most effective model because of this coordination between 2 instructors who can really, roll their sleeves up and look at their curricula and make adjustments. But it's also a tremendously expensive model because you have 2 instructors instead of 1 instructor. And that's something that's not always possible in various contexts. So I think all of these models live side by side. You have to look at your own context. Sheltering could possibly work. I don't think it's a model that's popular outside of, say, the US. That's
I
why,
think
but
we have
it's
a question about the sheltered instruction model here by
okay.
Nader, who
Sure.
says, "Don't you think that it is somehow, time consuming, especially if it is used as a strategy and not as part of the program? Aren't we taking the risk of sacrificing the depth of the academic material?"
That's a good question.
Mm.
In the ideal definition of sheltered instruction, these students get all of these enrichment activities, and the ultimate goal is to remove the sheltering framework and mainstream these students who've previously been sheltered into the mainstream classroom with their L1 peers. But if you talk to any sheltered instructor, they will say, it's absolutely not possible to cover the same amount of material in the sheltered class that's covered in the mainstream class, simply because we're doing all of these enrichment activities. So I think that's a good question. And I would basically say, yes, I think we are sacrificing to some degree the course to the aim of sheltering the students, but at the same time, we're enriching the students and helping them to acquire these more complicated language strategies.
Right. Do we have some time for a last question or?
Sure.
Yeah, right.
It's morning here, so.
Right. Do you think sustainability is a content that can bypass the needs assessment criteria in the CBI syllabus design? Right.
Not sure that I totally
Yeah, perhaps sustainability versus needs assessment, or I don't know. Perhaps I can. I think, Bahia, can you perhaps
elaborate,
ask your question
maybe.
orally?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Professor Brinton. It's lovely to listen to you. So I have this question because see, while you were describing the criteria for designing the CBI syllabus, you had listed out a few, and the first one was needs assessment. It's very important to assess the needs of the learner before we decide what content to be delivered to them. So I
Right.
was wondering, since sustainability has become such an important thing among ourselves, I think it's a what do you say? It's a very mandatory thing for everybody to know. So do we have to do a needs assessment to arrive at the conclusion that whether the student needs this content or not? Because this is something that they really do. So when we are bringing in content on sustainability, can we skip that step? That's my concern.
You skip it because you feel that you already know the answer? Is that why you would want to skip that step? I mean, explain maybe a little bit more why you would want to skip the needs assessment step.
Because this is what I think, because sustainability is a content that the students at this point of time should learn, irrespective of. So do we have to go through the needs assessment process there?
I think I understand your question. So I would say probably you could bypass the needs assessment step if everyone is on the same page, determining that sustainability is something that students should learn about, should be engrossed in, then go ahead and skip that step. I don't think we need to think of that list that I presented as a prescription, as everything is prescribed there. These are suggestions to help you build your own course syllabus. But feel free to make your own decisions there, because you know your context far better than anyone else.
Right,
And I think we
yeah.
don't want to underestimate, what teachers know about their learners.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And before I just a quick thought, Professor Brenton, I was really looking forward to this because I'm a research scholar working on content-based instruction, and I've been reading a lot of your papers. So this is like a fangirl moment for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Donna. I think at this stage we don't have any other questions. Just thanks for this presentation, for all your thoughts on CBI. That is very relevant to our context in Tunisia, to the various pedagogies that we are implementing in the English departments here. So we are very happy to have had this presentation with you today. And we are looking forward to perhaps a future webinar with you on pronunciation, maybe.
Okay.
On the teaching
Thank you,
of
Basma, for the
pronunciation.
invitation, and wonderful to,
Welcome.
as I said, visit Tunisia virtually again. I wish it were not virtual. So sometime we'll
Yes.
hope for another real
Yeah.
visit, but this
Well,
is
yeah,
still wonderful opportunity.
right. You're most welcome. So thank you very much. And I'll say bye to all the participants. Thank you very much for your patience, for having been patient, okay, waiting for Donna to come back to the meeting. And I hope everyone
Yes,
has
I
learned
really
something.
appreciate that, everybody.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I will be looking forward to our next webinar for this year that will be posted very shortly, perhaps in next week or the week after. Thank you very much, Donna,
Okay.
and
Good luck,
I will
everybody.
say bye to everyone.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Donna.